Before I start, I'll just apologize in advance. I'll probably be a little bit rambly because I have a lot of news coming in from Hong Kong, which is affecting me for various reasons. So I'm going to present on the City University's Sustainability Debate Series. This was a series of basically two debate tournaments that we ran, one in September and then once again in the second semester in March, I believe the final was. The aim of the sustainability series was pretty simple. At a very micro level, what we wanted to do was expand awareness, because I'll be honest, Hong Kong is pretty terrible at that, and I'll have a slide on that later. So just to start with, you'll notice three logos at the bottom. One is the Campus Sustainability Fund. This is internally at City University. There is a CSF. You can apply to this fund. I think we applied in the 7th round. It happens, there's 2 rounds every year, so this is the 4th year that this was happening. The middle one is a logo that I made. I'm very proud of that logo. And the third one over here is something that I want to point out. This is the GCSO. It's the Global Consortium on Sustainability Outcomes. So the GSCO is a network, basically, of 12 universities, a few research institutions, and a few companies. This was started by the Arizona State University in order to just bring researchers together. The aim is very simple. There are sustainability problems in the world, and this is where it comes in to be linked to the SDGs. And we want to find innovative solutions. I want to talk about the GC, I always call it GSCO, the GCSO just slightly, because some of the projects they run are very innovative. In 2018, they had actually, let me just ask you guys, when you guys wash your hands, how many of you prefer to wash your hands with hot water? Nobody. Great. So they found at least globally, a lot of people prefer, or they have the idea that washing your hands with hot water is better because it cleans bacteria or it kills bacteria, so on and so forth. The reality is not true, right? That's actually not true. It doesn't happen. So one of the projects that they funded and they ran was this on and off-campus solution Sustainability Accelerator program. And so the project was testing the removal of hot water from university buildings, initially in 3 locations, at KCL in UK, Dublin, City University in Ireland, and ASU. So the collaboration was interestingly both quantitative and qualitative, right? So there was a lot of research done into actual numbers, like how much water do you need to genuinely clean your hands, whether hot water makes it better, whether cold water is just as good, whether ice-cold water, because Ireland is very, very cold, whether ice-cold water has any negative effects either. And what they found was, having room temperature basically is good enough, right? This project was then expanded into 8 universities, including the Hong Kong University of Science and Technology. So these are the sort of, I think, fairly innovative projects that this consortium tries to fund and develop. The idea is, how do we make the world more sustainable? And I know it's very tricky to get these sorts of projects into, if you will, the real world. There's a lot of interesting research happening all over the world. So one of the things that's also important that the GSCO tries to sponsor is knowledge. And that's where the debate series kind of came in. So at City University, obviously we have the Campus Sustainability Fund. That's also something that we do genuinely care about. City University was the first university in Hong Kong to ban the sale of plastic bottled water, plastic bottled water. I'm getting this wrong. Anyway, you know what I mean. What they did was every student, every freshman going into the university actually gets a bottle, and there were 2, now there are 3 locations where they can get a free refill on the water bottle. So what the idea is, try to eliminate waste, eliminate plastic, and also have better water habits. Just because, as you can see in the graph, Hong Kong is really, really bad at water usage. Globally, the average usage of water is 110 liters, whereas in Hong Kong, per capita per day, it's 224 liters. We love our princess showers in Hong Kong. So the awareness of water security in Hong Kong is very low. And one of the reasons for that is we have a very steady supply. Hong Kong buys its water from the mainland. The mainland sacrifices its own water supply to ensure that Hong Kong has a steady supply. The reason for this is financial. It's purely financial. As a result of that, there are regions in China that actually suffer water shortages. The river that provides water in Hong Kong I can't say it's running dry, but then the supply has been running short ever since the mid-90s. So that is a concern. So, we have this phrase in Hong Kong, in the water security circle, where we have the illusion of plenty. Because you open a tap in Hong Kong, there's going to be water, right? Unless there's maintenance, and we know that, but there's always going to be water in Hong Kong. Whether that's sustainable or not is another issue altogether. So the awareness of water security is incredibly low in Hong Kong, and that's certainly one of the things that we wanted to do. This is also a pet project of mine, just because water security is my own personal area of research. And so I have a professor who's really interested in sustainability, so this is how we kind of collaborated. Obviously, it is connected to the SDGs. I think these 6 are probably most directly relevant. Quality education, obviously making sure people know about this. Clean water sanitation isn't only about access, but it's also about maintaining a supply, and I think that's a huge problem that we have in Hong Kong. Sustainable cities and communities, obviously the more we use, the worse our supply gets. Responsible consumption, like I said, we like our princess showers, but that's probably not the best usage of water. Climate action, I'll come back to this later and you'll see why. It's because we had 2 series. The first one was almost entirely on water, but the second one was more on climate change as a whole. And obviously partnerships, right? The GCSO, I always get it wrong. The GCSO is a wonderful partnership, I think, right? So membership, as you saw from earlier, you have got Hong Kong, there's 2 universities, City University of Hong Kong, University of Science and Tech. There's a university in Thailand. There's a couple universities in the UK, including KCL. There's a university in Portugal, Spain, and the United States, Mexico as well, right? So it is genuinely quite global. It's not as huge as we would like it to be, but I think obviously trying to get it larger. It's only been around for about 4 years. It has a lot of funding. The funding sources are a little bit questionable because it's funded by PepsiCo. One of the major sponsors is PepsiCo, but they do say that there's no strings attached. Whether that is sustainable, I suppose, is a different question altogether. But the aim of the challenge was very simple. 1, have awareness in Hong Kong. 2, try to have public engagement. And this was a tricky thing because, as we all know here, debate tournaments are awesome for debaters, but trying to get an audience, like a public audience, to a debate final or debate series is difficult, right? It's nigh on impossible to get members of the public to go for these things. And really just locally, we wanted to get City University students to become more aware of the challenges that we face in Hong Kong with regards to water security, get them to use less water, use those machines that we have on campus because they're really, really great. So we applied to the Campus Sustainability Fund, and the aim was twofold. It wasn't just a debate series, but what we wanted to have is also have keynote speakers from completely outside of the debate community. Right, so for the first series, we had someone from China Water Risk, because it's an NGO that I work with, to come and talk about the risk that China faces as a whole with regards to its water supply, just to get genuine facts and figures out. Like, I think we as debaters tend to be occasionally very good at making arguments sound good, but in-depth research in facts and figures is something that most debaters, I think, lack. And obviously this is where research work is important, right? So that was one of the aims. Also, having someone come in from the community means that that organization, in this instance, China Water Risk, has an incentive to try and get more eyeballs in. So they shared it on their website, on their Twitter, and we had a couple more people come in. This is true. The third way we tried to engage the public was, before the final, we had food. At almost any university event in Hong Kong, if you promise free food, you'll get more people to go. I'm not gonna lie, that's kind of how I started debating, actually, right? So that's one of the ways that we did this, and the Campus Sustainability Fund was very useful in helping us get money, basically. These are posters that I made, and I'm very proud of them. So this is for the first event. These 2 posters are for the first event. I was a little bit more busy in the second semester, so I just made 1. So this was the keynote speaker that we had. It was Deborah Tan from the China Water Risk. She's the director. And it was about, does Asia have enough water to develop? It focused not only on China, but also downriver countries, including Vietnam, right? So that was a huge issue. Then after we had that, it was a keynote speech and a Q&A. Then we had the debate. The debate was great. It was a prepped motion, but as you would expect from university debaters, they didn't really prep as much as I would have wanted them to. The second series we had is the one in March. So this one, we tried to change focus. It wasn't just water, because I was very happy with the way this one went, but I didn't want it to become excessively niche just on water, just because I'm interested in that. So what we did is we decided to have climate change as a whole. It's interesting that we did this because around that same time is when Greta Thunberg, the Swedish child activist, teenage activist on climate change, became very popular, and she called for a global school strike. So we had this debate on Wednesday, and the strike was scheduled for Friday. So we also had members of the Hong Kong wing of the students that were calling for the strike to come over and talk a little bit about that. And so the debate motion was, for this event, the debate motion was whether or not children should have a stake in making policy. It was interesting because the teams didn't know that we had those kids there. So, the opposition side was like, kids have no experience and they shouldn't be doing this. After the debate, I told them, now we're going to hear from those children. The debaters were like, what? Why didn't you tell us? Because they were instantly embarrassed. But the point I'm trying to make here is, initially when we started, even though, I think these posters are prettier, it was very well organized. If you notice at the bottom, you've got CityU, you've got my weird logo, and you've got the Asian and International Studies department. That's the department where I study. But if you look at the second event, you've also got I think it's the school or the department, the School of Liberal Affairs, basically. What I'm trying to point out here is the second event naturally grew, partially because I think the first event went pretty well. Second event, as a result of that, was bigger. We had more support from the campus. We had more support from the community. We got a few press members to come over just because we told them, oh yes, this is a continuing, ongoing series. It was the second event, so we were able to get a lot more support, even though I was busier. The keynote that we had was a Singaporean explorer or a risk taker, thrill seeker, Mr. Kyushu. I'm not reading the name correctly. So he's one of the few people in the world who's climbed all of the major peaks. And his talk was all about how in the last 10 to 15 years, he's seen glaciers melt. It's become harder to climb, wildlife has decreased, and wildlife has changed, right? He was talking about at one point how previously, once you pass a certain threshold, there's no more mosquitoes. Whereas nowadays, there still are mosquitoes even higher up. So that's obviously all relevant. These are just some photos that I decided to put there. These are the student leaders for the strike in Hong Kong, so they were watching the debate. These are the judges, these are just audience members, HKU, CUHK, HKU, CityU. So CityU won the first challenge and HKU won the second. I think in terms of participation, we had university teams not only from Hong Kong but also Macau participate. One of the things we're considering is whether we should open it to the high school community, whether we should open it to the international community. But as most funding projects go, there's a long list of administrative requirements, proposals, so on and so forth, that we're still talking about. The deadline for the next application is like November. We're thinking about whether or not we'll do it. But yeah, so I already mentioned this. We had a lot of growth from the first and second series, right? We had better university engagement. More departments were interested in basically giving us a venue. The first venue we had was the Senate Chamber. That's from the university. The second venue that we had was the College of Liberal Arts and Social Sciences. It was a cozier but prettier venue. One thing we didn't expect was actually we had a huge turnout for, we had a huge turnout for the second one. So the first one, we kind of had a half empty room, so we're like, maybe we should get a smaller venue. And when we had the second event, it turned out we had a lot more people. So we had people literally standing at the back, which was, looked great in photos, but it probably wasn't super comfortable for them. I didn't get to have a seat either, so it was terrible. My opinion, we had a better debate as well, and we had greater community engagement. Like I said, we had members of the press come over. There were a couple interviews done with the debaters, with the chair professor who was helping me with the project, and a couple of the student activists. So I think that greater community engagement allowed us to get more attention. I think that's important in growing these sorts of projects. The reason I point this out is because I think a lot of projects, when you do them for the first time, especially when it comes to sustainability, which isn't necessarily at the top of the list of people's to-do list, the first event might not be so great. And I'm being honest here, the first event that we had, we worked on it pretty hard, but the outcome wasn't that great, right? We didn't have a lot of students. I know people came there for the food, but then they didn't really stay for the debate, or they stayed for the debate, but they were on their phones the whole time. The second debate was genuinely better, partially because at least the participants had a good time. As a result of that, we had posts on Facebook, posts on Twitter, and more people were interested in the second event. I think that's really important because when it comes to sustainability, your efforts have to be sustainable as well, right? You can't let the first initial impulse of, okay, maybe this event didn't go so great, let's stop, maybe try something else. You gotta keep going for it, and hopefully it keeps growing. So where do we go from here? I think we're definitely aiming for another series. Like I said, we've covered some of these things, but not all of them. We have been looking at trying to talk about reduced inequalities. It's not necessarily the type of sustainability that the Campus Sustainability Fund supports, but it is something that the GCSO supports. So we're looking at trying to have a proposal, maybe make it a little bit bigger. The aim certainly is to have another series, and this time not only on climate risk, but also on just community risk. Community sustainability is obviously very important as well. In a city like Hong Kong, we've got issues right now, but traditionally the issue is rich are super rich, poor are struggling, and that's something that me and my professor would certainly like to look for. I think one of the best things that has come out for me as a result of this project is genuinely, I know I get it wrong all the time, but the GCSO is awesome. So like that partnership for the goal, I can see why it's so important, why it's so necessary, just because you can pool all these resources together. Like the project that I mentioned that they do with regards to hot water, that's fantastic. So yeah, I think moving forward, we'd like to grow the project, probably get more of the partner universities to come join, and hopefully there'll be more partner universities that do join the consortium as a whole. So yeah, that's pretty much all I want to say. So I wanted to give you guys an overview of what happened and where we can go from here. So I'd be happy to answer questions if there are any.
Okay, any questions?
We are behind schedule, so I'm happy to stop.
So one small question for me. Could you explain more about, so you introduced your project, 3 types of the project, so how like the debate in your project, how it's promote the goal or SDGs more?
Yeah. So you can see the poster in the middle is obviously all to do with debate, right? I think one of the things that we wanted to have, debate is it's a fairly popular activity in Hong Kong. The plan originally was, okay, let's do debate, and as a result of that, we'll get a lot of these kids come in, and the aim was not really to make them watch the debate, but the aim was really to get them watch the keynote speaker, right? Again, it's a part of education. Don't come in, make 5, 7, 8-minute speeches, whatever, and then completely forget about it. The aim was to try and get them have more information. I know this is successful because a couple of the kids, as a result of this, have become genuinely a lot more interested. She's my student, but one of my students actually had a project in her own school where she has been making a proposal to have solar panels on the roof. And I can't say it's entirely because of this, but I do think debating has helped her become a lot more aware of sustainability. Just because of the motions, obviously we run a lot of motions, as evidenced by this tournament, right? We do have a lot of motions on sustainability. So I think awareness is one of those things, and debate is simply a way to kind of get eyeballs towards this sort of event, right? All the motions that we ran in the debate series had to do with sustainability, very directly. The motions were made by the professors, I maybe wordsmithed them a little bit so that they were a little bit more debatable. But generally speaking, they were all to do with various sustainability issues.
Okay, thank you. Other questions? Okay, thank you very much, Sandeep.